Folks, it's Jonathan, Spiritual Speakeasy once again, and I must admit I'm in fanboy mode this morning. We've got the amazing Mary Rodwell with us, all the way from Queensland, Australia, by the way. And Mary had to explain to me that the reason why it's dark is because they're approaching their kind of winter solstice as we're approaching our summer solstice. I'm not sure what the temperature's like with you at the moment, Mary. We're in some kind of ice age, so global warming's not actually hit the UK yet. So how's things with you in your winter?
Oh, look, it's fine. It's t-shirt weather during the day. It only gets a bit cold in the evening, and we're wimps. So if it goes below 20 degrees C, we already start putting our Ugg boots on.
Fantastic. Well, 20 degrees C, we're starting to moan about the weather, it being too hot. So there you go. And that's the difference between us and the UK, of course. But anyway, thank you so much, Mary, for giving up your time to come and talk to us today. I know that I know you, Mary. I know your work, and many people around me know who you are. But there's people out there, perhaps, that have been first time introduced to you. And I just want to say that you're a truly inspirational lady, because this series of talks is all about people who have had a massive influence on other people's lives, people who are very inspirational. And you're also, well, if I can explain a little bit about you, and I don't want to kind of preempt anything, take away your thunder, but I know that you're a therapist, but you're much more than that, as are most people who work with the light these days. I think we're classing ourselves as multi-dimensional beings, really. We work on many different levels, yeah. We're not just one thing, we're not just one category. But you know, it's hopefully talking about your experiences today, Mary, of working with people whose lives have been changed, literally changed through contract, might be a contract, through contact with extraterrestrial and extra dimensional beings. So that's the subject, that's what we're talking about today, folks. And you've helped millions across the world. Understanding, and we've talked about this, Mary, haven't we, about the isolation that things like this kind of work can bring to people. I know from an aspect of being a medium that, you know, you can feel very lonely being a medium sometimes, because, you know, you're the only person that perhaps talks about it, and the only person that gets it in a group of people that don't, and that's probably more so in terms of the extraterrestrial field, because of, you know, the tongue-in-cheek ridicule that the media still puts out about all this stuff, and kind of tries to sow this seed that anybody who believes in all this stuff is, you know, well, without being derogatory, you know, a little bit crazy, really. Thankfully, with a lot of the work that people like yourself and other people in the UFO community have been doing over the last 20 or so years, that's becoming much more accepted. And I know that disclosure's always been spoken about, and we seem to be getting a little bit closer to that as time goes on. But what Mary talks about, what you talk about, Mary, is something that's completely I would say alternative. It's the real deal for me. It's the real deal. The thing about the UFO community, I find, is that they talk about physical proof, and that's okay, physical proof. Great, let's have some physical proof. But we're still waiting for this big event, you know, the landing on the White House lawn, or, you know, walking into 10 Downing Street. But where I'm coming from personally is that we've been receiving communication telepathically from cosmic beings for probably thousands of years. You know, the communication's here right now, and I'd like to introduce Mary to everybody here that's watching this on that basis, that Mary's done some amazing extensive research and work into that field. and about the reasons why it's happening, why things are happening in the world as well. So I'm hoping that it might give a little bit of hope to people. And one thing I love about your work, Mary, is that even though it's aliens, and I do the old aliens bit when I say that, yeah, that you bring it across in such a human way, you know. And I know from when you came to our centre many years ago, people actually loved it. They loved. I was a little bit kind of thinking, are people going to take to this or not, you know? And they actually loved it, and they said to me at the end how you know you brought it across in such an understandable way, and I think that's a great gift as well. So I know people would want to hear you talk, and I don't think I've given you that opportunity yet, other than just to say hello. I just wanted to very briefly say how I came across you, if that's all right, how I actually met you. Well, I came across Mary through videos on YouTube, and I saw this lovely lady standing there in a conference room, and there was a big screen behind her, and then she started talking about aliens and things. I thought, oh, this sounds interesting, you know. And the more I listened, the more I'm thinking, crikey, this is amazing. This is actually there's actually somebody talking about the things that I'm feeling and experiencing, and of course that really did connect with me. And then I was very privileged to meet you for the first time at Gary Heseltine's UFO conference, which was literally just down the road from us, and I couldn't believe that all these amazing people in the UFO community were literally coming just kind of, you know, about 4 or 5 miles away from where we live, which was a wonderful thing for Gary to pull that together. And and then, of course, you came to our centre, which was just the icing on the cake, really. And I remember my eldest son being absolutely in awe that Mary Rodwell was coming to our centre. And and that's when it all kind of started. So that's my little bit of introduction about how I came across Mary and your wonderful work. But and you seem to have got the label the alien lady, Mary. Now I've been on your website, and it's a wonderful website, by the way. It's lovely, it's amazing. So I would recommend anybody to, after this, watching this, to go and check that out straight away. It's a must. Yeah, you've got to go. But I think it's now time to allow you to talk about yourself, Mary. So how did all that come about? Your life journey? How did you become known as the alien lady?
Well, I'll try and praise. That was a wonderful intro, Jonathan. And I also want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to those listeners that you have. For me, the journey's been lifelong in the sense that I think I've always been a seeker of truth, even though as a child I wouldn't have known that's what it was. But there's always been the questioning. And, you know, I was brought up in a very traditional Catholic family. But what I did discover was there were things that I was educated or told to believe, which you are in most religions, you're told what you should, you know, the dogma. What I found were not fitting always for me as I started to explore them from another level, particularly reincarnation. But to give you those that are listening an idea, I mean, I've come from a very, what I call a scientific background. I was a nurse and I was a midwife, so I've got a good medical base. But what I also then went into was counselling, and in counselling, you realize that you're looking for the cause of illness, not fixing it, you know, because the fixing is what the medical profession try and do, or suppress it. Whereas in counseling, you're looking at the psychological, spiritual, or emotional issues that are the precursor to disease. So that taught me a great deal. And I was also working when I came over to migrated to Australia, because I had a bit of a midlife crisis and decided that I wanted a bit of sunshine more in my life. And the family came, and instead of going back into nursing, I carried on with the counselling and worked in hospice and grief and bereavement. And what that did for me was highlight more of the soul journey, because there were people knowing that they were dying and questioning what happens after death. What's the purpose, and all those very important things that actually are going on right now with all these medical scares going on. People are being faced with their mortality, and it's nothing more scary and more focusing than facing your mortality, which is what's been going on for the last 2 years. And for me, it got me exploring even more to everything to do with reincarnation and past lives. And I got more and more intrigued, trained as a hypnotherapist, and then started to learn how to take people into past lives. And what was fascinating was past lives don't necessarily happen just on this planet. They happen on other planets too. And a lot of the new children particularly are aware of coming from other planets, other star systems, other dimensions, for example. So my whole paradigm was expanding until a lovely gentleman came to see me, and I'd not come across so much about the communication contact, although I had done 3 years to open up, just like, when you talk about your team, I've got my team, and they're not all physical, they're interdimensional, some of them are extra dimensional, some of them, are coming from other frequencies, and you don't really take on the physical reality of contact so much until you have people who've been up on the spacecraft that have talked about different beings they've interacted with. And what's interesting with all of that is we're leading into consciousness. And the problem with the nuts and bolts UFO people, and I've been one of them as well, is that it's much harder to quantify contact, because you can't always bring something from the craft to say, here you are, this shows I've been on a spacecraft. For them, it's very much a multi-dimensional experience. And this led me into understanding that we're really talking about spirituality and consciousness. And it isn't just about waking up with maybe marks on your body, being aware you've been taken on board craft, learning about the fact that you are connected sometimes to these beings themselves from, another level, a soul level, for example. And the communication, as you quite rightly say, has been happening with them throughout the centuries, and they were called gods. And they were, and that's how they've been labeled, as gods. Whereas we understand now that the gods are in fact extraterrestrial, and they just had technology that seemed like miracles. And so they were interpreted as gods. And now we understand that that's technology in many cases that we're talking about. So our modern way of looking at this is that we're being visited by these intelligences, and some of them are communicating with us, and many can be our guides, and many, I call it my non-human team, that help me with my work if I want to understand something. So people may have downloads of information from physics to cosmology from these intelligences, right through to more information about who they are, why they've come to this planet. Have they come as a star seed to help with the shift in consciousness? Yes, many of them have. They may come in with certain downloads on music, strange writing, artwork, star languages, light languages, healing abilities. All these things are what manifest after contact. And it may happen that contact happens after a near-death experience, or astral traveling, or out-of-body experience, or shamanic experience, or being activated by going to a spiritual group and starting to open up to their team of guides, and whatever may be the way they start to connect. And I always remember how some of those working in the spiritualists, for example, would be explaining that in their group, it was okay to have angels and Jesus and elementals and fairies, but it wasn't okay to have a blue guy with big black eyes. And So it was like that wasn't okay. Not some didn't see that as spiritual, but in fact it's all in the same bucket, as I've discovered, that that
Absolutely.
there are many different forms, like cat beings, lion beings, crystalline beings, mantis beings, a whole form of energy beings, light beings, and what have you. And for some, they may perceive it as an angel. For somebody else, the same being may be seen as a light being. There's no difference. They are, in fact, the same. It's just our perception and how we choose to interpret them. So for me, it was all about consciousness. And what we're learning now from the research that we're doing, which brings in metaphysics and spirituality into this whole, nuts and bolts side, is what we've discovered with our surveys of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation was that 75% of those that have contact have it out of body. So that's why it's so hard to qualify it and quantify it, because if there's only 25% having physical experiences, then it's much harder to qualify that and to say, oh, well, this is a reality. And that's been the problem with nuts and boltsers, because that, we're having to go into consciousness. And that's actually the big deal. And this is what you talk about, Jonathan. You talk about consciousness.
Yeah.
You talk about contact from a telepathic level, which is how they want us to communicate with them. This is what it's all about. That's when we're reaching a level where we can work with them in a conscious way. And this is exactly what you're doing.
I'm just going to change the screen view, Mary. I was so professional that I forgot to click over to that view. So every time the cat purrs, it kind of throws it. If you're not aware, folks, there's a cat just to the side of me here. So, and she just gets a little bit loud, and then the screen suddenly changes. So there you go, Mary. So that's wonderful. Consciousness, absolutely consciousness, because and you've hit the nail on the head about the spiritualist thing, and and we were talking about this the other night, that it's okay to talk about this, but it's not okay to talk about this, and why not? We're all part of the same thing, and when you begin to understand about consciousness and that we're all connected, then it opens our mind and expands our consciousness anyway, just by doing that, and it's kind of and once our consciousness is expanded, then we start to get all these different kinds of beings coming into that consciousness. And I've had experience of working with three cosmic guides, actually. One was a mantis, full-on mantis, compound eyes and everything. She taught me sentience, clairsentience, to work with that sentient vibration, that empathy vibration. I then had a grey. Can you believe I had a grey? It was about down here, and it was the most miserable looking thing I've ever seen in my life. And he would wear it looked like a bit like the Men in Black. He had a hat, a collar. I don't know why he dressed himself like this, with a black suit, and his collar, his little scrawny neck, his collar was just way too big for his little scrawny neck, and he called him Frank. So, and then I'm currently working with a very strong avian healing guide, seventh dimension avian, who calls himself Calpatra, and he describes himself as being part physical, part kind of consciousness. And then I've just been introduced to some new amazing healing guides called the Sisterhood of the Divine Light. And these are very feminine beings, apparently coming from the center of the cosmos. And they're very much healing not only humanity right now, but also healing the planet as well. So once we open our consciousness field up to all this, it just becomes incredible, and we've got to learn to welcome these beings into our lives, because there's so much rooting for us. And I'm probably sure I'm kind of preaching to the converted when I'm talking about this stuff, Mary, but it really is time now to really bring these beings into our lives, you know, because they really do want to help us. And I know this is obviously a major part of your work. And I'll perhaps want to ask you about the children, you know, in particular. And I think this is what really resonated with people, is that when you started talking about the new children, that I would say that people who are generally not awake, their ears begin to prick up, because you're talking and saying things that actually are relevant to what they're witnessing about their own kids. And as you and I know, this is not a new thing. And even David Bowie spoke about it, the new human, in his song "Oh You Pretty Things." And if you've not heard that, folks, you want to rush off after this and get it on YouTube and listen to the lyrics in that one, because it talks about exactly what Mary's talking about. So I'd just like to ask you a little bit about that, Mary, your experiences with that, and if there's any particular cases that have stood out in your mind. Obviously, that's if you're allowed to talk about them, because there's a confidentiality thing going on. But any particular ones that you feel might help people, you know, might help families?
Well, I got led into looking at the children from the parents who were experiencers, and we found that this is a genetic line. You follow the genetic line, and what I was discovering was the children were often very different, and the parents would say, oh, they've got this label, they're calling them ADHD or Asperger's or dyslexic. And I was very keen to wonder why, if they're upgrading humanity, why these children are given these so-called dysfunctional labels. And what I discovered was that they are deliberately wired differently, so that they're not programmed into the old mindset. And these children, many of them talk about coming from other planets, other star systems, interdimensionally. They're coming with their sense of mission and purpose. One 10-year-old was explaining to me that the planet he came from, he was a blue being. This was his first physical incarnation, and he was a center seed, and that meant connecting to the center of this planet so that he could help with all the pollution on this planet, for example. He said even with his eyes open, he could see interdimensionally. There are many other children talking about their mission, their purpose, where they've come from, their abilities, many talking about going and being taught how to levitate, how to use their psychic abilities on board craft. And they'll often talk about their special friend that comes and gets them and takes them through the window or through the walls, which is quite okay as far as they're concerned.
Absolutely, yeah.
And one 8-year-old was explaining to me in great excitement that previously, a few days previously, she'd been taken up on a craft and shown how they do a lot of interventions with different species, creating new species, where they seed other planets, not just in this universe, but other universes. Ever so excited about telling me about this. So we've got these very awake children, and the reason that they're different is because of the way they've been wired. And of course, it's been seen, you know, many of them are empaths, healers, so they're often hypersensitive. And the parents say, you know, I've got to be very careful. The other thing some even complain about is the kids being telepathic. And I remember a letter from a lovely lady talking about her 3-year-old daughter. And she said, the problem is, Mary, that she's been telepathic from birth. She tunes into everybody. And she said, you know, it's 3 years on and it's getting very tiring watching your thoughts, because you know your daughter can pick up on them. And, you know, this is the challenge, because these kids can connect to your energy. They can connect to your emotions. They will be aware of where you're coming from in terms of your agendas or whatever, and what you're thinking. So we're being challenged as humans with children like this to really come from a place of love and integrity. because they can see right through it. I remember a 7-year-old explaining to me when I was in the US, apart from being visited, he said, by Bigfoot, and he explaining a teenage Bigfoot came to see him, and the grandfather Bigfoot, who was all white. And he said, you know, I can speak dolphin. So I said to him, so he said, do you want to hear it? So I said, yes, that would be good. So he does all the clicking of the dolphin, and he said, I can tell when people are lying and telling the truth. And I said, so what does that feel like? And he said, well, when they're lying, I go all cold. And when they tell the truth, I feel warm. So he had a wonderful way of resonating to truth through his own feelings and what have you. And if you give these children a chance to share, then they'll start to tell you all sorts of things about themselves, what they learn on the spacecraft, how they are different, and what their mandate is. Some have told me that they can work with the elements, for example, this kind of thing. So we've got these super multi-aware children that are not fully understood by mainstream at all. And that is why I wrote The New Human, because I wanted to tell some of their stories. And I didn't edit any of it. It was their story, how they understood their reality and experience. And also asking, specialists that were aware of this. There were educators that were writing to me, telling me about kids in their classroom that they could see were these new children, because they were star seeds themselves and they recognized this new upgrade of human. Clinical psychologists writing to me and saying, I can see these kids coming to see me. The parents are completely unaware that this child is able to tap into things and is doing these things. So we've got certain professionals that are seeing these children right across the board. And they're saying, helping them is the difficult one, because in school they get shut down a lot of the time because of that, or, because of the programs. And I believe some of that is absolutely deliberate. And I remember a 9-year-old from Sweden saying, Mary, when you go, they shut down your light, she said, and they treat you like a program, and they just press the keys. And this is really why I felt so passionate about writing about them, because they're everywhere. This is not just one country. I'm getting letters from all over the world, from Poland to Uruguay to Canada, where their parents are writing about their children and how can they help them and how can they be there for them.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? And you touched on something there that I realised a good while ago about the education system, and I know we had a brief chat before we came on to do this video, and I've changed my name for that now, and I call it the indoctrination system, because it really is there to drum the bejesus out of these kids that they are spiritual and cosmic beings. It's become so far removed from the truth, their truth, and it must be so difficult for these kids to witness this, sitting there in classrooms thinking to themselves, well, that's not right, that's not true. And I remember my eldest coming back home from school quite upset one day because he'd been in RE, religious education, and he wanted to talk about spiritualism, and they just totally shut him down. They shut him down completely, said, no, we're not talking about that. And it was there's only certain religions in the world that actually exist, and that's all we talk about. We don't talk about anything else or open up our consciousness any further than that. And that's where it kind of really came home to me that and I very much doubt the teachers are aware of the agenda that might be going on behind that, because as with many politicians and many teachers and people who are, let's say, working for the state, it's their profession, and that's what they do. And as we know, the medical profession's been heavily involved with that. you know, in the last couple of years or so. And these people are just trying to do the jobs, you know, but they're getting this kind of directive coming from the top, that this is how we must do things. And you know, I'm very much on the case of, you know, with, you've mentioned with the conditions that kids have been labelled with, and the autistic kids in particular, that, you know, they're just amazing. They are amazing people. They're amazing beings. And it is, Mary, going back to that consciousness thing, it's opening up the mind and allowing ourselves to be open to all possibilities. One thing that always concerns me is when we talk about this subject is, particularly when you look on the YouTube channels and in the comments, it's like, oh, you know, there's certain kind of, let's call them zealots, come on board. This is demons, and this is this, that, and the other, and you're dealing with the devil and all this kind of stuff. Well, I just want to say to those people right here and now, if you are tuning in, that I've been at this for 28, 29 years. And I can tell a demon when I know one. Yeah, when I see one. So I challenge these people to kind of come up with the same statement on that one and prove that they, you know, they've got that backup. But yeah, so we're not talking about any of that. What we're talking about is open-minded consciousness. I'll get my teeth in. And once we embrace that, the magic begins to happen. The whole world begins to take on a different, totally different meaning. And when we open that up cosmically, wow, you know, and thank goodness that quantum physics is really kind of beginning to explain these different dimensions and these potentials for different levels of consciousness now. So that's good. I feel for both yourself and myself, Mary, in our fields of work, that the scientific fraternity are starting to come through. And I'm sure the kids that you're talking about are going to be the scientists of the future that are going to be embracing all this stuff as natural, you know, and all the old dogma and all the old, you know, I mean, let's be honest, science is very much bought science these days. It's bought and paid for by certain organisations that will heavily influence the results of their scientific research. Once we've kind of got over that hurdle, I feel as though spiritually and scientifically, we're going to go in leaps and bounds. And these wonderful kids that you're talking about are going to have free rein to really, you know, come and do what they came here to do. I remember, for some reason, I've got to tell you this. I don't know why. It's just, it's like, being a medium, things do come into my brain and I have to talk about them. It was a connection with the Arcturians. I don't know whether you've come across the Arcturians in your work, but they're an interesting race of beings, by the way. They don't talk much. They're very telepathic, very healing. They work a lot with people on the healing vibration, so I'm fairly positive that more and more people might begin to experience them. And you've talked about the blue beings, you know, about the blue beings with the big eyes and all that kind of stuff. Well, just one night watching telly, and this is where it happens, by the way, folks. This is where magic begins to happen. When you kind of relaxed and you're passive and you are just in that lovely kind of part meditative state. I was watching telly, and all of a sudden I was aware of two blue beings that popped in by the television set, and they looked very beautiful. The skin was beautiful, the very beautiful features, and the words were, "We're connected now." That was it. They disappeared and off they went. And I realised that that was their way of telling me that we're going to be working with each other. Just a few words, we're connected now. And that's all it takes, you know. So it's fascinating times. From the last perspective of the last couple of years, Mary, how has that affected you with your work? By the way, have you? I'm pretty sure you've not been letting grass grow under your feet. Have you been keeping going, keeping working, keeping going, doing this amazing work that you're doing?
Well, the only downside has been, if you can call it that, is that I've not been traveling. I've had to stay put because of all the restrictions.
Yeah.
And in a way, it's been very nice because I used to be traveling every 1 to 2 months. And being at home has been great. The interesting thing is I can still do conferences online. I can still do hypnosis online. All my sessions are online. So it's not limited my work in that sense, other than physically not being able to go to conferences. What I have noticed, and I'm sure you have too, that what's happened with what the rules that have happened due to what's happening on the planet, where people haven't been able always to go to work, have been limited in, their traveling. There's been a shift in many people because they've started to look at things in a different way. There's nothing like having your back against the wall and facing your mortality for you to start looking at things. And I have never been so busy because as people have had time to reflect, they're no longer racing to footy or to the gym or whatever it is. And they're sitting with their family, realizing what really matters is the family and, their health. They've started to open up, and many of them have been awakening or activated through this whole time. And what's interesting with that is, like yourself and your center, they then say, well, how do I work with this so that I can be confident about who I'm accessing, what's happening to me, understanding? And I will say, do you see orbs of light, or do you see energy fields, or do you see beings, or do you feel presence, all those kinds of things? Do you have downloads or whatever? And they'll say, yeah, some of this, but I'm still not certain of who they are or whatever. Right. Well, let's do some introductions and let's find out exactly who you're connected to, and let's have an operating system that gives you confidence and whatever. So a lot of my work has become, it may be that they've had missing time and they've wanted to know about an experience when they were 5 or 6 years old, where I can take them to that time where they can see what actually happened, whether it was on board craft or whatever. But for some, they want to find their answers on a regular basis themselves. Say, right, well, let's get you communicating from that level. And so a lot of my work has been showing them how it works and saying, you already know, but you've forgotten. So I'm going to remind you of how it all works. And so a lot of my work now has been reminding them how we tap into our communication and contact so that they can start to understand exactly their connection, who it is they're working with, what more, all those questions that they've had. Why are you visiting me? What's it all about? What's my mission? Why am I here? Because that's the big one. Many are saying, I want to know why I'm here. What's my mission? Am I on my mission? Am I doing what I'm meant to be doing? Because I know I'm here for something. I know I've got something to do. So that's been the big one. What is it I'm here to do? Because now I want to do it. So if you can ask me what's happened in the last 2 years, there's been an explosion of individuals opening up and realizing there's something very important that's part of their soul mandate.
It's incredible. What I love about all this work, Mary, is that we're all talking the same language. We're becoming this one language. We're becoming, connected through this consciousness. And as you said there, and there'll be many people, millions of people across the world who will echo what you've said about this situation where people come and say, look, I know I'm here to do something. Can you help me to find out what that might be? Yeah. And there's also many people who have said, oh, well, I can't see any awakening going on. I can't see that happening. And I'm hoping that people like yourself and the work that I do, Mary, we can try and explain to people that is happening big time. Yeah. It's just amazing. I wouldn't expect anybody outside of certain, let's say, fields of consciousness and I don't mean that rudely to people, but you might work in a factory, or you might work, whatever you do. Your job doesn't require you to be kind of consciously connected all the time, so you're not going to perhaps see the awakening going on around you. But from our perspective, I think that's a big message that perhaps we can both get across to people, is that it is happening. Don't lose the faith, because it is happening. It's going on right now, and more people are awakening up, of all ages, by the way. It's not just the kids, it's people coming to me in the 60s and even 70s, yeah, who are having their awakening moment. And so there's no age limit, there's no time limit on this stuff. It's knowing that we've come here to do something. And something that's come across to me, Mary, recently is very much a shamanic message as well, is we're not actually discovering anything, we're remembering it. Yeah, we're actually remembering who we are and what we're here to do. And I feel that's a very big message for people. By the way, I'm really absolutely loving that picture behind you. What's the story behind that? Is there a story behind it?
Well, I was given the picture about 30 years ago by a good friend of mine who knew I was into all the weird and the wonderful.
Yeah.
What's been fascinating is that I've had a number of people look at it and recognize it as a Stargate. And one of them was an 8-year-old that stood up and said, pointed to one of the pathways and said, "That planet, I've passed that planet." He said, "And I've gone down that particular path," and explained that it was a gate to another universe. And then he described the other lights and saying they're artificial ones when they move equipment in and out. So I've had it explained to me on a number of levels about what that was. And as I say, it was a gift to me by a friend, because and it's interesting, it says the artist it's got unknown at the bottom there.
Okay.
But plainly they were an experiencer. I don't know what your thoughts are when you see that.
Well, it really, number one, it draws you in, but it does that automatically because of the perspective on it.
Yeah.
But it's almost like, that to me, and I couldn't even tell you what it is, but I feel it's language. All the golden, it looks golden on here, but all the lines going into that planet there,
Yeah.
and it would be lovely to actually physically feel that painting. I did that at Gary Heseltine's conference for a guy who said that he was inspired. He wasn't an artist. He was inspired to paint these things, and he invited people to come up and tell him about them. And I thought, oh, I must get my hands on one of those, And I went up and I picked this picture up, and it was a star map. And I was trying to get an opportunity to talk to the guy. And I won't mention his name. I'll just say he seems to be a very controversial person in the UFO world right at this moment in time.
I think I know who you mean, actually.
Yeah, but I said, look, I've got to talk to you about your paintings. And you know what? He just totally shut off and blanked me. And I couldn't believe it. And he even invited people to come up and tell him about his paintings. But I thought, wow, this is actually a star map, And so, given probably an hour or a good couple of hours with his paintings, I would have loved to be able to write a load of stuff down about that. So, yeah, so I think what you've got there is incredible. And you know what? It even looks like you're actually already there. You're actually in that. Have you seen a new series on, is it Netflix or Prime or something, called Night Sky? It's called The Night Skies or something. It's about this couple who have this room underground, and it actually links them to a different star system or something. It looks very much like that. It's. I think there's a message. The big message for me with that painting, Mary, is this is the link to other worlds. That helping us understand that. this is not just what we see around us.
Yeah.
This is. I love that. I love that. It's a shame that there's no prints available.
I'll take a photograph of it. It's metallic, by the way. I don't know if you can tell that it's metallic.
Yeah, well, it looks metallic, and I'm thinking, how have they actually recreated that metallic? Yeah, I
No,
bet.
it is metallic.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to
I'll
get
send
my
you a
hands on
photograph.
that.
I'll send it to you. I'll send you a copy of
Fantastic.
it.
Yeah, yeah. And are they still painting or?
I don't know even where it came from. It was a good
No.
friend of mine many years ago that, because I was into all of this, said
Mm,
I don't even know where she came across it. But
yeah,
I've been given pictures like that all the time, where either the artist or someone's just given me something, and it's been connecting me to certain stuff. You know how stuff comes to you
yeah,
when you're involved in all of this, and
yeah.
I've had all sorts of things given to me that this was important in some way or another. And even
Absolutely.
with the skulls as well, I've had an opportunity to connect to some of those as well, which has been fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, it's the more I look at it, the more I'm actually there. It really puts you
Yeah,
there,
well,
and
I'll send you a
it is quite incredible. So yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Um, so just moving on a little bit, Mary. Could you mind me asking you this question? Are you a little bit psychic?
All right, so I've got to come out the closet a little bit. Um, let's put it like this: I didn't believe that I wasn't intuitive at all, because I thought I was far too normal and far too grounded, which is hilarious given what I do now, isn't it? But I was invited by a lady clairvoyant medium who was told by her guides to train some professionals, and I was invited by one of the professionals to join them, and there were a couple of clinical psychologists, a nursing sister, trance medium, and myself. And I was asked, would I like to join? And I said, yeah, absolutely, thinking at the time, this is so hilarious now, thinking that I was going to watch all these amazing people just become more amazing, at the same time thinking, I'll be able to watch them all just expand, and, never thinking in a million years that Mary might be one of them. But as it turned out, like, with literally no expectation, things happened. And how in these groups, after, you meditate, you connect to your team. And I had certain things happen that I couldn't explain.
Mm,
And after 3 years, was pretty then convinced that we could all do this if we so desired,
mm,
that this was an innate part of our who we are. And that was really good for me, because, as I say, I came from a position of everyone else was going to be amazing and I was just going to be watching them.
mm.
Plainly, that wasn't the case. But I connected to my team. We did remote healing, we did channeling, we did dowsing, we did you name it, we did it. Flower readings, you name it, all the whole gamut. What it
Fantastic.
really demonstrated to me more than anything was how much that enhanced my understanding of my 3D world,
Mm,
because I could just say, what about this? And they would give me information, and I'd say, all right, now I would get them to qualify it, to verify it, because I was taught to do that. And they would do it in some way or another. Or I would get, the buzz, psh,
mm,
that's it, that's accurate, whatever. And what it's enabled me to do with things like hypnosis, which I didn't realize would happen, is when I take somebody into hypnosis, I'm getting information as well,
mm.
because I'm going on the same frequency. So I'm being guided by my team, with their superconscious. So it means you can be more accurate. You can ask questions that are often far more useful than they've even consciously realized. So you're working with their superconscious higher self. So
Yeah,
what it did more than anything was help me understand what experiences that are going on in the craft, opening up intuitively, but not knowing how to manage it, Well, I can give them an operating system, as I call it. You know, I can actually show them how they can ground themselves and work with that because I've done it. So
Yeah.
so that's and that's been important, Jonathan, because if I didn't understand how it worked, then it would be very hard to help someone who was trying to ground themselves and manage that. So I can say, right, so this is what needs to happen here, and I can help them do that. But I want to stress that everyone can do this. This is the thing that for me was this misconception that only certain people are gifted, when actually everyone can do this. It's innate to us. You know this. So in truth, yes, the books I was helped with, everything I do, I get helped with, including the name ACERN, including everything. What do I call it? How does this go? What's this for? The whole bit. So there you are. Now,
Yeah.
no secrets now.
You're now out of the closet, Mary. That's wonderful.
Oh, it's one of the things, Jonathan, I want to say to people is that the whole programming is to shut out that part of you, to dumb down and deny how important it is to your understanding of your reality, and that we to actually have to break away from that programming and honor that part of ourselves, because otherwise you're going around with one eye closed and you don't even realize it.
Yeah, and 1/3 eye open, which is more important. Yeah.
That's exactly, yes, exactly.
But you know, you're absolutely right. It's the cement in the bricks, in the brickwork. It is, and you know, this is the big message. And I come across you know, people in the medium fraternity going, oh, you know, you're a medium from birth and that's it. You can't be taught this. Well, that's just absolute nonsense, you know. And you can be taught this, and it's, you know, what I love about this work, Mary, is it's so simple. People make it so complicated, you know, and they sit there and they try to make things happen. Literally, thought, you know, overthinking it all. And the secret to it is, it's very simple. Is just be passive, being passive. Absolutely. Just, I suppose we are going into a hypnotic state. We learn to alter our state, our brainwave patterns, and again, that's when the magic begins to happen. And it's so simple. Even the breath alone, just the breath can take us into that passive state, as we know through meditation. And of course, meditation is our spaceship. Really, it takes us to any dimension, any form of consciousness that we possibly wish to visit. And I think that's one of the things that is loved about the human race, you know, from the cosmic sense, is that we are these amazing divine beings of light that can do anything. They love us for that. They think we're incredible, you know, and they're so, and this is it, they are so interested in what we are doing right now, and you know, they're rooting for us. They want, come on, the human race, come on, you can do this, you know. It's like, we did this eons ago, you're going through it now, come on, you can do it, because they want to welcome us into their family, into the families. And they do literally have a lot of them are very awed by the human race, and sadly we've been turned into this awful prison planet, and we've had our divinity just absolutely pressed down to almost nothingness, you know, by various means of control. And but thank goodness now that we are beginning to awaken, and we are beginning to see the light and take our rightful place, as one guide called it, our rightful place within, you know, the spiritual and cosmic families. And they're wanting us to join them, and the possibilities that will come with that, Mary, as I'm sure you know your clients tell you, are just immense. They're immense. You know what the human being is actually capable of physically, mentally, and spiritually is beyond many people's imagination, really. And you know what? Imagination is the thing. It's the key to it all, because that is what the human power is. The human power is imagination, because within imagination it's the power of thought, and imagination is also the power of creation as well. So I just wanted to get that point across, and thank you for that, Mary. That's lovely. I know time's always against us, isn't it? And I'd love to spend much more time speaking with you, Mary. I'm sure you've got things that you need to do. Life goes on. I'm hoping that perhaps we might be able to have a part two one day, and continue talking about this amazing work that you're doing. But I'd like to ask you: are there any plans for any new books, or are you planning to do some touring again, or what might be coming up on the Mary Rodwell agenda?
Well, I've refused anything this year, including Spain, but next year I have agreed, as long as there's no restrictions, to come to the UK for the Awakening Expo in Manchester in August, if that, everything is in the right place for that. So in that case, I'll be doing a little bit in the UK, and that will be lovely to catch up with all my lovely friends and family there in the UK. So you never know, we might get to touch base, Jonathan, then.
I very much hope so, Mary. I would very much look forward to that. You're very welcome to pop round to the centre and have a cup of coffee and, have a catch up. And there might be a few more people there, though, just than me, because if I let people know about it, that is. But, and it's a little bit, can you believe that Manchester's actually a little bit nearer than Doncaster? So, yeah, so it's just literally over the Pennines for us is Manchester. But I'll tell you what, I'll be booking a ticket on that one soon as I see your name in lights on that one, Mary. I'm sure that'll be brilliant. If that happens, let's keep our fingers crossed that everything goes well. But of course, we're having new things thrown at us now, so without mentioning any names, because you know what the little bots are like these days. They're getting more and more intelligent. Yeah. Which I'm sure was based on ET technology, but used for all the wrong purposes, let's put it that way, yeah. But no, Mary, it's been absolutely wonderful to chat with you today. Always mind expanding. I hope that people that are watching this are also, so interested and so well. It's again, I'm going to kind of finish as we started. It's that consciousness thing, isn't it? It's expanding people's consciousness, and I believe that a lot of people in this world are sowing many seeds, and I hope that some seeds have been sown through this meeting today for people connecting the dots, which is really important. And we talked about community as well offline, about how community is really important right now, and about we're forming communities, but we need to bring those communities together for the wider community. So, we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, understanding each other, getting over those massive hurdles of divide that have been created on the planet, and bringing the hearts and minds and the spirits together at last for the greater part of the next phase in the Great Awakening. But Mary, I'll put your details in the comments in the about section on the video. So I'll put your website address and everything. And do read Mary's books. They are incredible. My wife Anne was always a little bit dubious about the whole alien thing, and after reading Mary's books and meeting Mary, and when Mary came to our centre to do that wonderful talk, that completely altered her perception of the whole thing, really. And you know, she's had her own kind of meetings as well. So that's wonderful. As I say, it's all about opening that consciousness. So thank you once again, Mary. You're an absolute star. Um, I really am keeping my fingers crossed that that expo will go ahead. Is there anything that you would like to say to anybody just before we kind of close down?
All I'd like to say is something that a 9-year-old told me about human beings. And she said, you know, Mary, she said, human beings are incredibly amazing, but they've got to start believing it first. So let's start believing it, guys.
Absolutely. And that's from a 9-year-old. Yeah,
9-year-old in
from a
Sweden.
9-year-old. Well, there you go. That says it all. That encompasses everything that we're doing right now, doesn't it? You know, believe it, accept it, open up your consciousness, and the magic begins to happen. Mary, wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure. I know a lot of people are looking forward to hearing what you've had to say today. So I'll put that up on YouTube probably over the next couple of weeks or so. I will let you know when that goes out, by the way. And just to say thank you once again. Okay. And thank you, folks, for tuning in. You're amazing. Just believe that you're amazing, because you are. And drop us a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed to the channel, and we'll hope to see you very, very soon. Okay. Take care. Bye for now.